Among those at the White House for the signing ceremony was Senator Chris Dodd, chairman of the Banking Committee. Earlier tonight, I spoke with the Democrat from Connecticut about this historic day. Mr. Chairman, thank you for joining us tonight. This is a historic day, and I appreciate that you're busy on the Senate floor tonight. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Lawrence. Good to be with you.
You were Ted Kennedy's best friend in the Senate. When I was looking at the images today in the East Room with his widow, Vicki, there, his son, Patrick, his niece, Caroline, you there in the room, I just expected at some point the camera was going to pick up that shock of white hair and Teddy was going to move in there and throw his arm around you. If Teddy had been there today, Senator Dodd, what would he have told you about what you accomplished?
Well, I think he had a great sense of history, and I think he would have reached back and talked about the fact that, I guess, Teddy Roosevelt, Franklin Roosevelt, Harry Truman, even Richard Nixon. Teddy appreciated, I was sorry that the president didn't mention Nixon. Lawrence, you're a great student of this institution and government. And Richard Nixon actually tried to do something on national health care in that first administration, never succeeded. But Teddy appreciated the efforts, and of course appreciated the efforts as I worked with him in '93 and '94. You may recall when Bill Clinton, President Clinton, obviously tried valiantly in the same vein. So I think he had a great sense of that. And the president graciously mentioned his appearance in that East Room about a year ago, maybe one of the last, other than a couple of votes he cast later that spring, was the last real public appearance he made as kind of an appeal once again to try and get this off the ground. That is the national health care debate and the victory we saw today. So I couldn't help but think of him sort of reaching back to all of the battles, some won, some lost, the piecemeal efforts over the years. He was around for Medicare, that battle in the 60s. He was, of course, the author of the Children's Health Initiative. It was a great help to me when I wrote the Family and Medical Leave Act. It was a great help to me when I did autism, premature births, infant screenings, child care legislation, all of these pieces trying to fit the puzzle together. What was missing was this gap, and that is the notion that every single American had a right to health care. And so I think today he would have been thinking about all of those efforts over the years.
Now, Senator Kennedy, Chairman Kennedy, and your committee literally handed you the gavel when he just could no longer carry on physically. You had to get this bill through that committee in the Senate, and you gave up on Republicans. At what point did you know you weren't going to get any Republican cooperation in that committee, and did you then believe that there was no chance of Republican cooperation the rest of the way?
I think in retrospect, I knew pretty early on. I mean, you can tell, as you'll recall, Lawrence, for your days here, you can tell pretty early on whether or not you're going to have someone you can work with or whether or not this is going to be just a struggle, and that they've made a conscious decision really not to be part of a final effort here. And that was pretty clear early on. Now, I know Teddy Kennedy, Senator Kennedy, early on, in fact, really tried to work with the minority on his committee, as he had done on so many other issues. But he wasn't getting much. I'm sorry.
Sorry, Senator. It seems like the last 2 months may be the most dramatic part of this story. Roughly 2 months ago, Scott Brown was elected in Massachusetts. Right. There were plenty of Democrats, good Democrats, who were strong supporters of this bill, who believed it was dead. How did you get this thing back up off the floor and moving?
You know, I'll tell you something, and I don't know whether maybe I'll be the only person with this view. I actually think the election of Scott Brown helped Democrats because all of a sudden it wasn't 60-40, it was something less than that. I think it reinvigorated the party. Instead of relying on just producing the numbers, I think it caused us to step back and try to figure strategically how we were going to get this over the finish line. And I almost had a sense while we had, I think the period between the election in Massachusetts and the events of the last couple of weeks, there was kind of a hiatus. It was a quieter period. There was that, obviously, that conference at the Blair House, which I strongly recommended. I thought it was wise to kind of calm down a little bit, take a breath, step back, regroup, and then go forward. And candidly, I almost think that election in Massachusetts actually helped produce the results we saw today.
Senator, quickly before we go, turning to financial reform bill, the next big crusade in the Senate. You're the chairman of the Banking Committee. You have a horrible problem out there in the Senate floor where you need 60 votes to move the bill on the Senate floor. You're going to have to get at least one Republican to go forward. In what may be the most politically polarized era the Senate has ever seen, with Republicans and Democrats just completely opposed to each other, do you think there's any way you're going to find that route to 60 votes in the Senate to move that bill forward?
I do, Lawrence, and I actually think the events of today and the last couple of days are going to help in that effort. I can tell you any number of Republicans I know in this body who, frankly, were never overly enthusiastic about this just say no to everything. They didn't come here, they didn't get elected, they didn't spend the time to come here just to not be at the table to work on issues like the health care debate and like this one. And I frankly think the just say no strategy was the political equivalency of a high wire act, and it failed. Now the question is, are you going to get to the table and be a part of fashioning a product in the area of financial reform? And I think I'm going to find some partners willing to do that. Bob Corker of Tennessee has already indicated that, wanted to work on this bill. Richard Shelby and I have worked on a number of bills together. I think he wants to work with us on this one too.
Senator Chris Dodd of Connecticut, thank you for your time tonight, and congratulations on this historic health care victory. And please, for me, pass on my congratulations to all the committee staff and the Senate floor staff involved in getting that thing through the Senate.
That's a true Senate staffer that made that comment. I'll do it as well. Thanks, Lawrence.
Coming up.